Y'all give yourselves a hand one more time. Okay. Y'all not. I just want to ensure that y'all understand how important it is for men and fathers and young men to come together. Does that make sense? Especially to have what we call meaningful dialogue. It is, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that here shortly, because oftentimes when we get together, we talk about things that aren't necessarily meaningful. I mean, the game is cool, and I'm not mad, but our communities and our families are in the kind of situation that those types of conversations don't necessarily get us to where we need to be. And so for you all to take time out to come out and do this, you know, I mean, it really does warm my heart to see all of those who are here today. I wish it could just be us. I do realize the ladies are here. I'm not mad, but at some point when we do get together again, Frog, let's just make sure it is just men and that's it. All right, because we have conversations we need to have amongst ourselves. Y'all mad at me for that? Okay. There's conversations we need to have amongst ourselves where we can be frank, open, and honest. And oftentimes, again, I'll talk a little bit about that. Oftentimes, having other distractions doesn't help us out. But I want to talk today about a program and some research that we've done. I've compiled it in something called the Labyrinth of Life Transformation, or LIFT. I want to talk about that today. Now, the notes that you have in front of you inside of that program are going to be missing some of the pieces I'm going to talk about today. So you can take some notes, but for the most part, much of the content is going to be in the presentation that I'll be making today. Just a little bit about kind of how we arrived at this space that we're at right now. Back in 1999, we founded a program in Nashville, Tennessee called New Mentality. With that particular program, we wanted to lower the barriers that most men raise between themselves and other people. We want to lower those barriers so that men could again be able to have what we call meaningful dialogue that might help each other out. Many of those barriers that we found were raised not just between spouses, children, uncles or whatnot. We thought that the most troubling barrier that we saw was between men. In other words, men were not able to talk to one another. Does that make sense? And so that means that the person that often understood you the most is the one that you had the hardest time talking to. And I think that a lot of that grew out of dysfunctional relationships with fathers and older men. Does that make sense? Anybody know what I'm talking about? All right. I know that for myself, as I became older, as I matured, the communication and conversation between myself and my father struggled. All right. Because I began to do things that my dad had never done. He had never graduated from high school. So once I graduated, he felt like he didn't have anything else to do. When I got to college, I was learning other things. So when we came together, he didn't really feel like he had necessarily a conversation. And thank God somebody came to me and helped me to understand my father better. Here's what they said. They said, when you need something from your father, you've got to understand that your father is like a cup that has only been poured into so much. So when he comes to you, he's only able to pour into you what was poured into him. Does that make sense? So when my dad grew up without a father, he was giving me all the father that he knew. Is that making sense? All right. And so as I began to understand my father better, then I was able to approach him and have conversations with him based on what my father had in his cup. OK. And so these were the damaging things that throughout life, when you're a man, that could really change your perspective on your life and how you interact with other people. And so New Mentality was designed to lower those barriers so that men could have better communication with the most important people that you have. You do know that the person that you know the most, that you spend the most time with, is a man. That's yourself. All right. I hear you. Okay, y'all. I know I'm a preacher, and some of y'all don't want to say amen. That's all right, but that's like the fuel for my tank. Nevertheless, nevertheless, I digress. That was one of the challenges that we felt, and what we realized was that as we began to build trust, one man with another man, we started to see those barriers drop. And men could again begin to dialogue. And once y'all start talking, here's what I also found out. Y'all don't have a problem talking. And you don't have a problem sharing what's going on. The challenge is you don't share unless you feel like you trust the people you're sharing with. And there's nothing wrong with that. We just have to, again, create environments of trust where men feel comfortable sharing. Okay? And so that's important for us because oftentimes, ladies, this is nothing against you, but the truth is that men operate on a frequency, right? And our frequency isn't the same frequency that other people operate on. And if you're a man of color, you're operating on a frequency that oftentimes is inaudible to other people. Y'all ever seen one of them whistles when they call dogs and they blow that whistle and you can't hear it, but the dog comes running? The deal is that the real deal is that you need to be in a room with people who can hear your frequency, who understand what you're saying, who know what's going on in your situation. And so that, again, is what New Mentality was all about. That's why we started it. And that's what we found was that men wanted to talk. They just need an environment of trust where they could lower the barriers and have meaningful conversations. Wasn't nothing wrong with that. So based on what we found, I sought about from 1999 until even today to make sure that I did everything I could to understand what was going on in the mind of a man, what was going on in the life of men. Many of these men who were what I would call suffocating in silence. They feel like nobody understood. They feel like nobody really cared. Like they was in it all by themselves. Okay. Now I'm hoping I'm talking to some people to kind of get what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. So as I'm talking to these men, as I'm relating to men, as I'm learning what I'm learning, as I'm doing the research, I started to find that as I began to look at men, like all of you that I'm looking at here now, I see you. But the truth is that when I look at you and I want to see a man looking back, depending on what's going on in your life, I may not see a man. I may see a doubter, right? I may see a man that's in fear of failure, fear of rejection, because it only takes one rejection. It only takes one to change the way you operate and do what you do. And so what we have to do again is turn that around so that when I'm looking at a man, what's looking back at me is a man. Okay. Now, having said that, I couldn't help but raise this issue because I wanted to be immune from the challenges that many of us deal with on a daily basis. Okay? But it don't matter who you are. There are going to be people who are going to disrespect who you are. They're going to disrespect what you've done. They're going to disrespect your journey. Does that make sense? And all of these pictures I have on the left are the kinds of images, and there were words. I'm not going to read all this stuff, but there were words that have been said to him. There have been things that have been done to him. And so if people are willing to discredit the character and the integrity of the highest office of our country, what makes you think they're not going to disrespect you? Now, they're not going to say it to you. They're not going to tell you. All right. But even our IMPD, I was at IMPD not long ago, just this past week, and they were talking about some of the inherent biases within the police department. The inherent biases that will cause someone to pull a trigger and not really realize the reason why they pulled the trigger is because they didn't value the person that they were aiming the gun at. This was a bias that they didn't think about. It was subconscious. And so there are people that are thinking and doing things to you, at you, and around you that aren't even thinking or knowing that they are biased in their activity toward you. And so we have to walk out of our houses as men of color in fear of what other people are thinking or not even thinking. If it happens to him, chances are it will happen to you and me. He's been called all kinds of stuff. Let me move on. What I'm talking about right now is called lift. And I want to talk a little bit about why I'm doing everything I can to help men of color in Indiana, in Indianapolis, Indiana, or wherever I can help. Because I left Indianapolis in 1994, something like that. And so I left and I pledged that I would never, ever come back to this city. You know, I just said I'll never come back. I left. I was gone for 20 years. Okay, I really was drugged back to the city, but we won't go there. What I saw when I lived in Chicago, Colorado, Southern California, Nashville, Tennessee, what I saw on television was looking good to me. I'm just being honest. Can I be real? When I saw y'all basketball and football, I saw Circle Center Mall being built. I saw private. I was like, wow, Indianapolis got it going on, right? And then I moved back. And when I moved back, give me that water. When I moved back, I found out that Indianapolis was actually two cities. It was the one city that I saw on television, and it was a totally different city I saw when I drove to church.
Can't believe what you see on TV.
Yeah, oh my. And y'all do realize that there are people that look at Indianapolis and they can't believe what's going on in Indianapolis right now. They're blown away by what's going on. I saw that it was two cities. Now notice this. As America rebounds from some of the research, the wealth gap continues to increase along racial lines. According to Time magazine report, that's 2013, 2.4% of the wealth of Hispanics and black households actually fell. The households increased a small amount of those non-Hispanic. 2013, 2.4%. Of the Hispanic and black households that actually fell dramatically, 14% for Hispanic households and 34% for black households. So that started to help me understand what was really going on. There were some people that were going in the positive direction, and there were others that were going in the negative direction by double digits. Hello? Men of color are at the bottom of the employment ladder, with men who are working, watch this, earning wages adjusted for inflation over time below that of 1979. Started to understand what was going on, why I saw two cities in Indianapolis. It's the truth. Again, from the research, if minority men's wages rose at the rate of everyone else's over the last 30 to 40 years, a huge amount of the poverty problem would be reduced in the United States. Is that helping y'all understand why I saw two Indianapolises? And so I saw men, I saw fathers, I saw young men who were trying to be there for their families. They were trying to be responsible. They were trying to do the right thing. But for some reason, they were falling further and further behind. So to be totally honest, when I started seeing what was going on in the streets with the violence and what was going on in the streets with the subculture of the sub economy and whatnot that's going on the streets, I could understand what was going on. Because the guy's like, okay, I can't get a job, but I got to provide for my family. I can't get a job, but I got to take care of myself. I got to do what I got to do, or I have to do what I have to do. So here's what I did. Once I started understanding what was really going on statistically, I said, I need to get close to the street. Some of y'all are familiar with this. And there's more information in that little brochure right there on the table about it. But what I did is that I decided to pitch a tent in one of the most violent areas of the city, 30th and Martin Luther King. Just me and this flimsy tent on the street. My goal was to get close to the people and to understand what needs that they really had or that they were really experiencing. Okay? Now, we could talk about that another day, other than the fact that you can't live on the street for 30 days and not be changed. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Oh, I'm not the same man that I was before September the 4th, 2015. I'm not the same man. That tent, which was started to raise the awareness of the violence, to find out what people's real needs were, it became everything to that community. I think they didn't think I was going to make it past 7 days, to be totally honest. You know, and kind of like on day 8, they was like, dude, it's still here. Man, what is he crazy, right? But after day 7, we became a lunch counter. We became a counseling center. We became an altar for prayer. We became some of everything. I think one of the oldest individuals that came by was in her 90s, you know, and she just started crying. She was like, thank you for doing this. And I'm sitting there going like, what? What's the deal? Well, what she's really saying is that you cannot meet a need until you first identify what that need is. And that's what we were there to do, understand the need. But now let's just be real. This other picture down here is here for a reason, because I realized that I was not immune to the problems that the people in the community were running into. When I left teaching, I was teaching at Ball State University, telecommunications journalism. I did a 1-year contract back in 2010. After that contract was over, I haven't worked a full-time job since then. I thought I was immune, right? Matter of fact, just so y'all know, anybody want to see it, I got a rejection letter yesterday, another one, right? And so it doesn't matter what your education level is. It doesn't matter. I thought because of my past political involvement, the people I knew, right? And the fact that in 2002, my company, I was generating over $500,000 a year. I thought, well, I'm good, but no, I wasn't. I realized that I was a part of the very problem I was trying to understand, which is why when I walked up to certain men, or another guy walks up to me and he looks at me and he's trying to run game on me and I'm looking straight through him, he's understanding, dog, this guy I can't run game on him. No, you can't run game on me. I know what you're going through because I'm going through it too. I'm talking about I'm suited and booted, faking it till I make it. Y'all got to hear what I'm saying. I'm faking it till I make it. God come up to me, asked me for the money. I said, no, wait a minute. I need some money. Help me out. I can't find 2 pennies to rub together. And all I'm trying to do is take care of my 3 kids, try to get my daughter into college, try to be responsible, and try to empower some other people. Y'all thought I had it together, and I was the guy who needed the help. And I knew it was bad. In September 2014, when I looked over the side of the road, and I almost took my own life because I thought that my family was better off without me, that's when I knew I was in trouble too. Y'all hear what I'm saying? And this is why I'm here today to talk to y'all. Because here's the deal. And I got to get all off script. I'm sorry. I got to get all off script. I'm all off script. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. We have strategies for physical health. What we don't have is strategies for mental health. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? If you break your leg, should not nobody tell you to shake it off. It's all in your leg. But when we go through trauma every day as a man of color, when you walk out your house, you are dealing with the trauma of not knowing whether or not you're going to come back. That's trauma. And if you don't have a strategy for how to unpack that anger that some of y'all are feeling, that anxiety that some of y'all are feeling, that loneliness that some of y'all are feeling. Do y'all hear what I'm getting at? Mm-hmm. If you don't have a way to unpack that stuff, all you do is carry that junk around with you everywhere you go. It impacts your relationships. It impacts you on the job. It impacts your finances. It impacts your stress level. It impacts your blood pressure. It impacts everything that's around. Do you wonder why, as men of color, we die before? Do you realize you don't have 24 hours a day? You only got 23.4. Because you're going to die before everybody else. And the reality is, it's because of not this. It's up here. It's up here. It's how you handle what's going on in your head. Right? I saw this. I hope I can remember it. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Okay, let that sink in. Let that sink in. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. It starts up here. And when I was on the street, that's all I saw. was people who had been told, watch this, living a narrative that was written for them by somebody else. They weren't living their own narrative. That means they weren't living their own life. They were living a life that somebody had written for them. And then they tell me, well, I want to be my own person. I want to be my own person. I want to be my own guy. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to chart my own course. Yeah, but you look like everybody else. You walk like everybody else. You talk like y'all hear what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if you're going to be your own person, you got to start right here in your own head. So here's what we attempt to do. And here's why I'm here today. This is the first time I'm introducing this program in front of people, where I'm talking about connecting what we call psychoeducation. Because psychoeducation, and all that is if I stood up here and I gave y'all books or curriculum that's what's called research and evidence-based, 24/7 Dad, Prep 7.0, I can't remember, Prep 7.0, how to make your good thing better. These are all research and evidence-based curriculum that I can stand up here and say, let me give you some education. Let me give you some skills. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 steps, right? 12-step program. That's psychoeducation. Y'all with me? But that's not enough, right? Jobs is not enough. Forklift training is not enough, right? Welding training is not enough. You need more. And so what we're attempting to do is to marry psychoeducation with what's called psychotherapy. Right? And I know that's a dangerous word to say. But the reality is that brothers in this room, if you are dealing with loneliness and you are dealing with depression, or you're dealing with one of those big capital letter or even sadness, because some people think that they're depressed and they're sad. Some people think they're sad and they're depressed. We need to figure that out, right? The psychotherapeutic aspect of it, we believe, should be dealt with through a technique called cognitive behavioral therapy. All right? And where did I get this from? I got this from when I began to do the research. I actually looked around the entire world to find a model that would work for men, and I found it in Liberia. All right. What they did was in the research that they did of this program, cognitive behavioral therapy, what they did was they found young men who were turned into soldiers to kill at early ages. And so after the war was over, they just sort of cast these kids out, and now they're adults and they don't know how to do nothing else but kill. So I said, we got to change this behavior. Right. Now, here's what I found out later. The techniques that they were using, they actually got those techniques from the United States. So it led me from Liberia back to Chicago, Illinois. A program called Becoming a Man. Anybody ever heard of this? Becoming a Man? Okay. Nobody? Okay. Becoming a Man? All right. Becoming a Man is a program out of Chicago, and the University of Illinois at Chicago decided we're going to do some research to see how effective this program is. They did a research project to determine whether or not this program, this technique, had the ability to change behavior and change the outlook for men. And what they found was found that once they came back to report whether or not it changed the behavior of the men who went through the program, it had an impact of like 40%. Okay, if you're not in the business of research, you don't realize that's a high number. That's crazy. It was so crazy that the researcher said, this can't be right. Let's do it again. So they did it again. Numbers came back over 30%. They said, okay, something's wrong. We're going to do it one more time. Came back over 20%. They did the research again in a juvenile detention center. Numbers came back over 20%. Okay? So what I want to suggest today is that everyone in here who is listening to me right now, I want you to begin to think through the reality that even if you are in a program, even if you are getting some skills, even if you have opportunity, unless you find yourself some therapeutic support to unpack the anger, you can give me a job today and I'm gonna need counseling because I ain't worked in so long. Right? I'm serious. I've been daddy daycare for 4 years. So to throw me into a job is not going to necessarily work out. So you give me opportunity, I can still blow it up. Right? So I'm suggesting that you think about, or you can approach me afterwards. My information is in that packet. Approach me afterwards and say, Pastor G, I want to be a part of this. I'm that guy too. I'm no different than me, right? Because I ain't no different than none of y'all. I have the same fears, anxieties. I have the same, depression. I have the same, I'm hoping that none of y'all think the way I thought when I was looking on the side of the road. I'm hoping that none of y'all are there. But you can imagine with this kind of stress and strain that we're under, many men could get there, and they get there real quick. And the deal is, I had enough God in me to let God tell me that's not who you are. You are more than whom you have become. And I was able to reel it back in. Everybody doesn't have that. Okay? So I think my time must be up because I see you standing there. Nevertheless, y'all have my information in the back of the packet. I'm sorry I got off track. There's also information about the 10 campaign right there. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. God bless y'all. Thank you, sir.
We also have different packets for Pastor Gervin information if you want to share the community with your family. Additional packets.
Yeah. I gotta hear the lecture.
Okay, everyone. So this morning we were expecting a larger number. So since our numbers are smaller, that gives us a little more time to be a little more intimate, have a lot of conversation in your session.
Thank you, sir.
So instead of doing the 4 breakout sessions, we
Take
can
those,
do 2 sessions
the
so that we'll
leftover
have 2
magazines with you.
workshops going at the same time.
Take them with you. 'Cause I gotta head to Lexington, and I'll just get them from you later.
We are going to start off probably
'Cause I gotta head.
about 10 minutes late for the session. So we'll start our next session.
Bless you.
And that'll give you all presenters an hour. I'll give you an hour to show you what happens our day. It'll be a lot shorter since we're breaking into 2.
Bless you.
Okay? Everybody good with that? Okay. So, before we break into 2 groups, I want to give you a few reminders. There's food, plenty of food. So, if you